Today we're talking about CSS basics. And CSS is a language, but it's not an independent language. CSS always works with HTML. It's much like XAML in that way, and that XAML always works with some other language like C# or Visual Basic in the code behind. And CSS has three ways of being referenced. There's external style sheet, internal style sheet, and inline style sheet. And they're more and more broad in scope depending on which one you use. The external style sheet applies to multiple files, i.e. an entire project. So an external style sheet is actually a separate file with a .css extension, and it's referenced via a link tag in all the files that use it, so you can apply the same styles to multiple files that all have the same link tag. Internal style sheet is at the top of the HTML file, usually in the head. In fact, I'd say always in the head, and it applies only to that file. It can only be accessed by that file, which is to say the styles or the rules that are defined in it can only be accessed by that file. And then the smallest one is the inline style sheet, which applies to just one tag. It's not even just one type of tag like paragraph, say, but just that specific paragraph is referenced in. Well, using the HTML skeleton that we created in the last video, to demonstrate the external style sheet, you'd have a link tab in the head. So I come down here and say link, and then you have a rel attribute which defines the link as being to a style sheet. And then an href attribute which says what the external file is that defines the external style sheet. So you could have main.css, and you could have a subdirectory in this. For instance, you could put all your CSS files in a subdirectory of the same directory this file is in, and call it CSS. So you can specify a directory path in the href as well. For the internal style sheet, you use a style tag, and you need one attribute in this, which is the type attribute. You define it as type equals text/CSS, and then after this you write your rules, what's known as your styles or your rules. So you leave space to put those, and then put an ending tag. So anything in this file can reference this internal style sheet, but it can't reference the it can't be referenced from any file outside of this file, because only this file knows about this internal style sheet. Then for inline style, also known as an attribute style, you can put a tag such as P for paragraph, and then say style equals, and then directly define your rules in here. You can say for instance color blue, put a semicolon to separate rules, background color yellow, and then when you're done with all the rules you want for this specific paragraph, you end the quotation marks and then end the tag. And then anything that you have within this paragraph will have a color of blue and a background of yellow. So if we save this and then do a launch in Chrome, you'll see we have a paragraph with blue characters and a background of yellow. A more general format of a style that's used both in the internal and the external style sheets is to have the tag name, such as H1 for header 1, and then have a curly brace, and then have a property such as text align, center, and then usually I space over so these line up, and I put them on separate lines, and then say font family, Arial, just a type of font, and say font style actually it's already bold, so it'd be pointless. Well, maybe you could make a font style of italics. And color use red since we haven't used that yet. And then I put a brace at the end to indicate that's the end of the block of styles I want associated with that tag. And then in the body, if we put the tag and we save this and run it, see we have a centered italics title that's a red color, and this can be applied to any tag, and there's actually a lot more power you can use with CSS that I'll discuss in later videos, but I think we've probably covered more than enough for one video. Well, I hope you enjoyed this and learned a lot, and I'd really appreciate it if you subscribe.